Welcome to the third part of the Shakespeare Codes, the 13th proof. If you're wondering about the true identity of William Shakespeare, the playwright, then I would suggest you look at my presentation about the true identity and the reasons behind why he kept it secret. Now in part 2 I set you a puzzle, Sonnet 76. I asked you to look at it and see what you could find based on the Cardano grill and grills generally, or grids generally. And I think by this 13th proof we will have incontrovertible proof of his identity. I explained about the existence of Doctor John Dee, the polymath at the time of Elizabeth I, the man with probably the largest library in the kingdom. I went further and explained that Dr. John Dee taught a young Edward de Vere and also an adult Edward de Vere, and he taught him codes. This particular code, as you can see if you read down and up again, it says the Spanish ships have sailed. You have to remember this was the time of the Spanish Armada. In parts 1 and 2 I decoded various documents, 12 in total, and as I mentioned here, 8 were from contemporaries of Shakespeare, 4 came directly from his sonnets. I demonstrated that a coded message of 170 letters could be written down as a 17 by 10 grid or a 10 by 17 grid. And I also explained that from all 4 corners of any grid you could write messages up, down or sideways. So there were 4 ways of starting a message. 4 by the 4 corners is 16, 16 by the 2 grids is 32 different ways of writing down a coded message. I gave an example of how these codes are manufactured in a poem that I wrote by myself, David Declarage, David, the person who makes things clear, and a date of 1412. There's a clue in those numbers. Every flower's fine aroma scatters scent around the room. It brightens up the castle and fragrances the tomb. With floral combinations we'd ward off evil smells, and even cancel over a wicked witch's spells. Now the first thing I did in manufacturing this grid is take the 14 and the 12 that were in the date. That would give you the numbers, the axis, X and Y axis of the grid. And I wrote in Vere, Ed, and Edward, or Vere, de Vere, and Edward. And then I wrote the poem around it, as you can see, and now it is totally invisible. But now I make it visible to you, and again with the grid you can see Vere, de Vere, Edward, and if you put a Cardano grill over that cut out that way, it would give you the same. Here's an example of a metal Cardano grill which would give more robustness to it. It's cut out and given to the receiver of any message, and here we have a written message. When you put the Cardano grill over it in a certain way, you will see the coded hidden message. The Cardano grill was a novel way of coding. It was certainly around in Elizabethan times, and certainly Dr. John Dee used it. Here's another example where I put a cardboard cutout over a letter. The letter, as you can see, says, Sir John regards you well and speaks again that all as rightly nails him is yours now and ever. May he tone for past delays with many charms. Now again the cutout Cardano grill over that message. You can see the S, the P and the AIN, Spain. Spain sails in May to arms. It's a warning. So now for the 13th proof, we're going to go into Shakespeare's sonnets, which as you can see were printed in 1609 and never before imprinted. Here is the modernized version of Sonnet 76, the one you will normally find if you look it up on the internet. And I would urge you, if you're looking at codes within the sonnet, to use the original wording. This modern version has 4 letters less than the original. They're where the blue stars are. In the original, quick has an E on the end, keep has an E on the end, tell or spell is spelt differently and again has an E on the end. Now they're interspersed throughout the sonnet, so they totally break up any proposed coding. The thing that gave me a clue to this was the total number of letters is 445, which is a prime, so it's not griddable. I think I must have invented a new name there. Why of all the sonnets in the book did I choose 76? Well, there are a number of clues that made me think about it. The first, there were 2 V's were used to make a W in the first word Y, and I wondered whether those V's were part of Vere, as in de Vere. It looks contrived. The English isn't really great. There was a use of U's instead of V's, so I actually put V's in where they were the modernized English. There were some spelling errors, as in tell my name or spell my name was just S-E-L, sell. And again, is this a clue? Every word doth almost spell or tell my name. As usual, I ignored the question marks that were in the sonnet as what I call chaff, a misdirection if you like, and that made 449 letters, which is a prime number and therefore not griddable. So it needs to be broken down, and I broke it down into 2 groups of 7. Whilst I do know that using 2 V's to represent a W in Elizabethan times did help with the saving of lead type, I did take the 2 V's as 2 separate letters. And this first element of 7 lines gave me 224 letters. And the factors for 224 are written down here. You can see them. Just looking at what might be a manageable grid in Elizabethan times, I felt 14 by 16 or 16 by 14 was a manageable grid. So I wrote the letters down in that way. What do we get with this 16 by 14 X and Y axes? We get D, de Vere, Edward, or Edward spelt phonetically, D, and my name. My name is Edward, and de Vere. Let's change the X and Y axes now from 16 by 14 to 14 by 16 and see what we get. Well, here it is, and we get Vere, D, 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 that's 3 times, Vere, Edward, my name. Pretty clear, I think, that this is a coded message, and very clear what it's about. Edward de Vere is signing his name to the sonnets. And if we say that William Shakespeare wrote the sonnets and that Edward de Vere wrote the sonnets, then obviously William Shakespeare was Edward de Vere. Now we're going to look at the second element, the second group of 7 lines of the sonnet. 225 letters, there are the factors, and again if we look at what is manageable, we can see that 15 by 15 makes the most sense for the grid. And what is revealed when we look at this particular grid of 15 by 15? Well, I've divided the reveal into 2 groups of letters, definites, which are D, 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 de Vere, Edward or Edward, and O, because O was the signature of Edward de Vere, O for Oxford, clearly his signature, and that is there as well within the sonnet. And then some maybes, maybe WS, William Shakespeare, the initials is there. Vere, just misspelt, but again phonetically said Vere. And no right of, are they trying to say that the writer of these sonnets is Edward de Vere. I think again it's pretty clear that these two gentlemen were writing codes that have lasted for 400 years. That is not to say that there was not an actor called William Shakespeare. There certainly was. But again, I emphasize he was not the person who wrote the sonnets, the plays, Venus and Adonis, the Rape of Lucretia, and the other poetry. While someone created this incredible, marvellous witch's brew of brilliant English 400 years ago, it wasn't you. The mask is slipping, breaking away, and the truth is now being revealed. What's in a name? A rose by any other name would smell as sweet. Perfectly true. It does matter that the truth is out. It does matter that Edward de Vere is taken to be the true writer, but it in no way diminishes the brilliant work that was done. And it's important that everybody remembers that. This is not destroying anything. It's just shining it up. So, gentlemen, Doctor John Dee and Edward de Vere, 17th Earl of Oxford, take a final bow. You did a grand job with your codes. They lasted 400 years. Well done. And there's another couple that we should congratulate as well. Take a final bow, actor William Shakespeare and writer Edward de Vere. You were such stuff as dreams were made of, and your little life is now ended with a sleep. But the spotlight, the limelight is on you, and you will get the recognition that you both deserve. Well done, you are admirable tricksters. And in putting these three Shakespeare Code presentations together, I do realise I have been standing on the shoulders of giants: Edward de Vere, John Dee, John Thomas Looney, Dr. James S. Ferris, and Alexander Waugh. And I'd like to credit them for the work they did in the past that has helped me come to the conclusions I've reached. This ends part 3 of the Shakespeare Codes, the 13th proof. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you might look at some of my other presentations in History's Mysteries and All at Sea.